Hey everyone, me Kevin here. I am retaking this video on the update regarding Derek Chauvin pleading guilty to civil rights charges related to George Floyd's death because of drama that ensued in the comments section after my last post. Apparently, folks are more interested in their own personal views of political righteousness taking over the facts. Listen, folks, we're going to make this crystal clear right up front, and then I'm going to go through the news update, which I had previously recorded, which I'm just going to retake right now. We got to make this clear because apparently people don't understand what a plea agreement is or how resisting works, okay? That's what the problem was in the last video. In commentary, people were upset that I suggested that George Floyd, at one point when he was on the floor, stopped resisting, which is what the jury found. That is the fact. Yeah, he may have had certain drugs in his system beforehand. He may have been resisting going into the car. We got that. But you stop resisting, you stop using force. That's what the law is. And so for all the crazy commenters who want to put together their political perspectives and spew them out in the comment section on YouTube, let's make crystal clear what the Department of Justice says and what the plea agreement says. This is not bias. So the people who are like, oh my gosh, I thought you were unbiased. You're saying he wasn't resisting? Would you read the darn report? And that's exactly what we're going to do right now. Let's make it crystal clear because that's what we do here. I'm not here to report bullcrap bias. What do I get out of inflecting my bias on what happened in this trial? I'm reporting information. Now I'm reporting stuff that obviously people are politically heated about, which is honestly ridiculous because it's right here. In the plea agreement, defendant Chauvin admitted that on May 25th, 2020, he willfully violated Mr. Floyd's constitutional right to be free from an officer's use of unreasonable force. This is what Chauvin admitted to. And this is part of a plea agreement so that Chauvin doesn't get life in prison, okay? He's trying to negotiate his sentence down. I'll explain how that concurrent sentence works in a moment. Specifically, defendant Chauvin admitted that he held his left knee across Mr. Floyd's back, neck, and shoulder, and his right knee on Mr. Floyd's back and arm. In the plea agreement, he states that Mr. Floyd remained restrained, prone, and handcuffed on the ground for approximately 10 minutes. Derek Chauvin further admitted that he continued to use force even though he was aware that Mr. Floyd had stopped resisting. Okay, this is critical. Now, I've been on the road in law enforcement for 3,000 hours. I've been on both sides, okay? Now, I'm not suggesting anything by this beyond I'm trying to do my best to just report the facts here. I don't care about your Democratic or your Republican tilt. I freaking hate politics. I wish we would take politics out of politics so we can actually have government that functions. Look at California. It's a disaster, just as an example. But anyway, and I'm in California. It's all Governor Newsom's fault. See, I'll say that because I ran against him. Anyway, that's political bias, okay? But I think I'm right too. But anyway, I'm just being transparent about that. That's an opinion. We're focusing on fact here, okay? Listen, right here. When someone stops resisting, you have to stop using force. Even though he was aware that Mr. Floyd had stopped resisting, talking, and moving, and even though he was aware that Mr. Floyd had lost consciousness and a pulse, defendant Chauvin admitted that policy and training requires officers to stop using force when the subject is not resisting and to move an arrestee from a prone position to a side recovery or seated position because the prone position may make it more difficult to breathe. So what happens? We have a jury that declared that at some point George Floyd stopped resisting. Yet Derek Chauvin continued holding his knee on Chauvin's neck and back and arms. In the plea agreement, Chauvin is agreeing to this. Now, we understand it's a plea agreement, so obviously there's some element of like, well, at this point, I may as well just sign and hopefully get a lower sentence, right? But the point is, there is a point, and I don't think anyone can dispute that there is a point when Derek Chauvin was on top of George Floyd, where George Floyd was not resisting, where George Floyd gave up, and Derek Chauvin stayed on top of him. That's what matters here, folks. That's what matters. So all these comments about, oh my gosh, you said he's not resisting. At one point, he was not. We gotta chill with the freaking political biases. But moving on, let's understand what the news update here today is, okay? Chauvin appeared in person today to input or change his plea. He pled guilty in both Floyd's death and a separate 2017 case, in which both he was being civilly charged for essentially excessive use of force. In the 2017 case, he was charged with, he was arresting a 14-year-old boy. During that encounter, Chauvin held the teen by his throat, hit him in the head with his flashlight, and held his knee on the teen's neck and upper back despite the teen being handcuffed. So it's a very similar case here, right? Obviously, in this case, the teen survived and Floyd did not. Floyd died. Now, this wasn't the only encounter that prosecutors used to show that Chauvin had used neck, head, and upper body restraints in the past. There had been a total of 7 prior instances prior to 2004, and this surfaced in court filings. 4 of those times, state prosecutors said that Chauvin went, quote, too far and held restraints, quote, beyond the point in which such force was needed under the circumstances. Members of Floyd's family were present today, and so was the then teenager from the 2017 case. Yahoo News reported that as they were leaving the courtroom, Floyd's brother said to the 2017 victim, "It is a good day for justice." George Floyd's nephew said that as Chauvin had been, quote, held accountable for what he did in 2017 to the then minor, George Floyd would still be here. Now, the indictment now alleges that Chauvin violated Floyd's rights to be free from unreasonable seizure. The other officers had similar charges against them. Chauvin right now remains in prison on a 22.5-year sentence. That was the midpoint, recommended between 15 to 30 years when we covered the trial live, or at least the sentencing live, for the state case. And acknowledging his guilt in this federal case might actually help him get a reduced sentence in this federal case. See, without a guilty plea, he could have potentially faced his 22.5-year term plus a life term. Now he's facing a 22.5-year term plus a potential 20 to 25-year term, and those would be served concurrently with an additional 5 years of supervised probation and agreeing to never be a police officer again. So there is a chance that Chauvin's total sentence could get extended by 2.5 years to a total of 25 years, or that maybe the judge will just choose a sentence that matches the 22.5, not extending the sentence at all, but rather reiterating the sentence with 2 terms, and then always there's the potential of somebody being released early on good behavior or whatever. But look, I just want to be crystal clear, because in politics and political things, people get so emotionally charged about one thing. They hear one thing, oh my gosh, you said he wasn't resisting. Didn't you see him resisting going into the car? Yeah, okay, we got it. Floyd resisted going into the car. Yeah, there were problems leading up to the instance. A lot of things went wrong. A lot of things went wrong on both sides. But dude, if you're on top of somebody and they're unresponsive, get the F off of them. And that's not what happened here. And that is why, in my opinion, the jury ruled the way they did. And we've got a clear statement now from Chauvin as well, that Chauvin acknowledges that when resistance stops, which he acknowledges the resistance stopped, you get off and you move the person you're restraining to a seated position so that they can breathe better. Okay? All right? Look, folks, it's just the news. Chill out with the freaking comments and the hate. It's better to learn than go spewing crap in the comments, okay? All right. Thanks for watching this updated version. Goodbye.